Welcome to People, Places, and Things, a travel podcast that brings you captivating stories, fascinating people, and unforgettable destinations from all around the world. I'm your host, Ryan Lowe. Let's dive into this journey together. Hey everyone, on today's episode we have Daniel Chalegre from Brazil. Welcome, Daniel.
Hey Ryan, thanks for having me your podcast, and such a pleasure to be here with you guys. And let's talk a little bit about Brazil, places, and a little bit of history also. So let's get it.
So first off, I want you to go into your childhood, go into your past, and how was it growing up in Brazil?
So I was born in 1996 in Porto Alegre, Rio Grande do Sul, in extreme South Brazil. So my childhood was pretty normal, pretty okay. My family was pretty good. We had my father was able to provide a lot of good stuff for us. And since I was a kid, me and my dad, we were really close, and he's basically one of the most intelligent persons I ever really met. It not just because he's my father, but really, I really consider that. And he always pushed me to study more, and always push forward to my interest in history. And my mom was also a very good, very present mom, and they both plays a big role in my life.
What made you become a school teacher? Give me some details about the place where you're from in Brazil and what kind of makes it special, some of the stuff there is to do around there, about the culture. What made you want to become a teacher and impart knowledge to the youth?
So I would say the main character on that decision at that part of my life is my dad. As I said, he's a very steady guy. When I was a kid, we always had in his house till nowadays basically a big library at home with a lot of history books about physics, books about astrophysics, books about basically everything you can think, biographies. And he was always pushing me forward since I was a little kid. I remember being like, I don't know, 8 or 9, and we would, have long talks in the car about, physical concepts, and history, and, economy, and every one of the things, philosophy. And I was really, really interested in it since I was a little kid. I remember my first books that my dad gave me was like Napoleon biography, or stuff like that. So that really built my interest in history, and basically in everything, but history and philosophy, sociology, psychology was always like my big areas of interest. And also my experience in the school was very good. I didn't have the best grades at all, since the fifth grade, but I always enjoyed to go to school, and I always enjoyed, to study humanities at school. Like history, geography classes was my favorite. I remember being a little kid, and one of my favorite things to do when I was like 7 was go to my father's library and get an geography book and get a look all countries and its capitals and its most, populated places and stuff like that. It was just, a big interest for me, like right away when I was a kid.
Some of the people from Brazil that are notable are, some people have no clue who they are, and they're prominent figures in history. One of those being Alberto Santos Dumont. I want to talk about him a little bit. What role did he play, and why is he a national hero in Brazil?
I think Alberto Santos Dumont is a big figure in Brazil. I mean, he's a very well-known historic character of Brazil, and he's a guy as he is an inventor. He is very successful, and he was a true genius. He was versed in a lot of areas of knowledge, but I don't think he's fully recognized. I mean, a lot of people don't know about him outside of Brazil and the things that he invented, but the airplane, we have already talked about this a little bit, but yeah, his role in the invention of the airplane is a big discussion around intellectuals, but he's well accepted in Brazil as one of the greatest inventors of our history, and definitely a great character for those that look for study more of the history of Brazil and.
So he was a balloonist, an aeronaut, sportsman, inventor. He had a significant role in creating lighter than air and heavier than air aircrafts. He's one of the only people who had a role in pioneering both systems. And I want to hear about some of his inventions. Can you kind of run us through some of the stuff he created?
So he was very famous to create a lot of stuff. Some of them are more definitely more complicated than others. He invented a specific type of stairs where it makes you step with the right foot in the right place. Let's put it that way. But other than that, he also invented one of the first forms of warm bath, inside of the house. It was a kind of a gadget where you had two ropes attached to two different fountains of water, and by pushing them in the right amount of each one, you would, get the water in the right temperature that you want to take your bath. So that was a pretty cool invention. But he is most famous for the invention of the recognized it by a lot of people as the true first aircraft, the 14 bis, the 14 bis, which was presented in Paris in the 1900s, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And it was a great demonstration because it was open to the public, and he was able to perform a quick flight. Let's put it that way. But his machine was able to launch itself from the ground. It didn't need any support for another outside gadget or anything like that. It was able to push itself to to the air, and that's why a lot of people consider him the true inventor of the aircraft, other than the Wright brothers that also performed longest flight, to be accurate, way longer than the 14 bis, but they had to launch themselves with a outside gadget that was just for launch, the proper machine, and it has to be done on top of a hill. So you have a little bit of a condition right there where that you need to have in order to perform. You can perform it in whatever place, like the machine Santos Dumont built. So that's why a lot of people, discuss about the matter.
He's a very prominent figure and is very contentious whether he did create the first aircraft, heavier than air aircraft. Lighter than air, like balloons, blimps, have been around since the early 18th century. I want to go into a little bit about his past. So he had a lot of resources growing up. He had a lot of education growing up, and his parents were highly supportive, and they wanted him to succeed and wanted him to have every resource. What do you think he means to the Brazilian people, and why don't more people know about this?
I think more people don't know about this around the globe. It's due to the lack of information, obviously, that people have. People don't usually know about a lot of other countries' background history. It's like it's not something that everybody knows. You have to have your own interests, or at least be someone that works with or really appreciate the matter. But he was from a very wealthy family, and the coffee business at the time was one of the biggest business in Brazil, to be honest, if not the biggest economic cycle Brazil had before, nowadays era, put it that way. So he had a lot of resources. The fact that he performed his demonstration in Paris is not something unrelated. It's not a coincidence. A lot of Brazil's culture before the 20th century are really, it's basically 100% faced towards Europe, and Brazil's relation with Europe, culturally speaking. Not just speaking of art and how we produce our literature, poetry, and art itself, but also the way that we built our culture and our educated culture was really faced towards France. Also, Rio had a big reform in the 1800s, I believe, that it was inspired and it was made. The Rio Branco Avenue was built up in the city, taking down a lot of neighborhoods that was in the way of it, and it was meant to make Rio look like Paris, look like Champs-Élysées in Paris. So, yeah, that's a big relation right there, and definitely Santos Dumont was a really, really well educated person and outside of the box, in every meaning of the expression, I would say.
So I didn't even know about him until recently. You don't hear about these people. You hear about the Wright brothers and everything. Of course, we're in the United States. History class is going to teach you more about American history than world history, because obviously it's so vast, and so there's so many things to go over. But I want to talk a bit about the history and the beginnings of Brazil. Who is credited with founding Brazil, and what do you think it was like back then? I mean, it's very primitive, and there's a lot of tribes. The Amazon is more massive than it is today. There's a lot of indigenous people, and actually there was people that are found that are extinct tribes that have Polynesian DNA, that have somehow made it all the way to Latin America on makeshift boats. But I want to know about the beginnings. What do you think?
So let's start with the with the person credited to be the first discoverer of Brazil in the 1500. Um, it was Pedro Álvares Cabral, who was normally credited to be the leader the um, of the first mission that got to Brazil in the early 1500s, in the very first year of the 1500s actually. But we already know that they were aware of the continent, and there were more land in on the south of what Columbus had found in the first place, what is just the islands, um, the islands in Central America. He never actually landed in the America continent. But they knew, Portugal already knew that there were more land south of what Columbus discovered, and so they said at the time there was an accident, that they end up in Brazil by an accident. But we already know that this is kind of this is a game well played by the King of Portugal with the Kingdom of Spain, to be honest. And those guys back in the day, they know how to play games really well. So he's the first guy who to be credited to get in Brazil, and he landed in Porto Seguro, Bahia, in the northeastern Brazil, in a very beautiful place, by the way. Um, and they call it Porto Seguro because it literally means safe port. So it was a very good place to get the ship right into the coast, so they can go to the land. And their first interactions with the Indians, they call it Indians because they still thought they were in India, and in the east of the world, the extreme Orient. But yeah, they were not. They know there was a lot of land, but they thought it was Asia. They didn't know it was a whole new continent, way, and the planet was way bigger than it really is. Actually, they already know this by since ancient Greek, but this information got lost in the Black Ages. But um, their first interaction with the Native Americans was really it was really Pacific at the first place. Obviously, they didn't know what they were dealing with, and they were so many, so many. I mean, millions of people lived in different societies all over South America, and you had big empires like the Incas. You had massive empires like the Incas in what is today Peru, Peru and Chile. But you also have a lot of smaller societies living, with dividing the same culture into smaller groups. Well known Caldas tribes, but also big cities, built in the middle of the forest and other environments and across the continent. But they were really focused on the coast at the most part, because Brazil's coast is basically was basically a gigantic rainforest through the whole 9,000 kilometers Brazil coast. So there was a lot of resources, a lot of animals they never saw, big ones, bigger than the ones that they had in Europe, and a lot of resources and a lot of resources in that forest, and a lot of resources, also resources that it was valuable to them, but it was not as valuable to um, the Native Americans, like gold.
So you're touching on, of course, they stuck to the coast, make it to come into the Amazon at that time with all the tribes there and so many unknowns. They didn't want to venture out. They would be in a place where they can establish a town, have boats, have men, without using too much resources to go inland. So they already could set up an established port, like Port Seguro. Um, what was the migration like, and what was the interest? I know a lot of the interest became gold, but South America is so natural resource rich. What was kind of the migration of the first Portuguese that migrated to Brazil?
So originally, Brazil was considered a stop by to when they realized it was not India, when they realized it was really big and it was really, not as explorated, and they didn't know. And there was a lot of myths about what the continent and what all that nature and all that mystery would hide, between all that unknown. Big, gigantic monsters, animals, tribes, cannibal tribes, and stuff that you don't even know. Cities build out built off of gold. All sort of myths and legends and stuff like that. But when we talk about migration and the first establishments in Brazil, we're going to talk about a little bit further when they discovered. So we're going to talk about the 1600s right there, because they took a little bit of time to consider Brazil a place to really establish something that you can really say that they were intent to populate the place. You know what I mean? So that took a little bit, and it was when they discovered that they could do a lot of money exploring just the things that they had here in Brazil, the resources that they discovered that had a specific value in European market, like the wood of pau Brasil, um which produces a red tint, which was so valuable and so expensive in Europe at the time. And the only way to make it was with specialties that comes from India. So they were kind of finding answers for their original problems without going back to India, and end up just living it right there after 150 years, and just started focusing just in Brazil, because they saw, wow, maybe we don't need to go all the way around to India. We just focus on the new land, on the new world, and that's it. Because there's so many resources right there. So, one of the first places was obviously in Bahia, and also the província de São Vicente, which is today's São Paulo, was one of the first places to be found by the Portuguese when they were, really exploring the land. But to get to the Amazon at that time, you would get to, forest, and then desert, and then, flooded places, flooded land, and then you would get to the Amazon, because you would take so long to get to the interior, to get to the center area of South America and what is today's Brazil. So exploring that new piece of land, exploring the new world was also a big market, and find new resources was also a big intention that they have since the very beginning. They discovered there was one valuable resource. Well, let's find another one, and another one, and we have to travel across the continent in order to, find more people, to slave, obviously, the Native Americans, to turn them into slaves, and to also compose the mass of slaves that had to, work in the future sugar plantations, cane sugar plantations, after that coffee plantations, and every one of the cycles, mining gold in the interior side Brazil, and all of those economic cycles that Brazil went from that point on.
So you touched on South America being really gold rich. It's said to have the lost city of El Dorado. So that's a big myth. But we know there were cities that were made out of gold. But this is an ancient city which was just entirely out of gold. And it hasn't been found. They have an idea, it's in the Amazon. Would you think the Portuguese or someone like that would have pillaged that, the Spanish or the Portuguese, and taken all of it and melted it down, everything, before anyone had an idea or was able to discover it?
The Portuguese were pretty aware of their intentions since they got in the land. Since they landed, they were pretty aware of the game that they were playing, and they were very good at the game of exploring the new resources. And obviously, the amount of gold that they found in South America and all across South America, not just Brazil, but what is today Chile, Peru, and all of those places, Bolivia, it was insane. They were the Portuguese Empire and the Spanish Empire. They were so successful in extract all that richness. And it was really true that the Aztecas and the Incas, they really had cities that was the buildings were decorated with gold from the outside. They really had enough gold to perform things like that. It wasn't something valuable, even valuable for them. It was more it has a spiritual value for the Incas and Aztecas, and for the natives in Brazil, it didn't really have a big meaning, because their cultural aspects were just not faced. Was just not faced for it. But going back to the Portuguese exploration, they really knew how to pursue the known as Indians, to take them to the places and get to know how to take off the gold, because they knew the techniques how to take off the gold off the land, and they would just needed to know where you can find it. You know what I mean? So they were pretty good and convincing with a lot of gifts and a lot of help in their own wars and their own territorial disputes between two different societies, and they help one side. If you take me to that place, if you teach me how to do that, if you teach me how to plant, if you teach me how which wood is good to build that, what wood is good to build this, and how to survive, how to kill that, how to hunt this, you know what I mean, what meat is good, what fruit is good to eat. If you teach me, I'll give you everything you need. Oh, do you want to take down those guys? Let's do it.
So this is a common theme between the Spanish and Portuguese. This is a tactic used to introduce yourselves as friends with gifts, and what made them successful was guns and everything like that, new technology, because most of these people still had spears. Most of these tribes are still working with primitive weapons, right? So that's how they were conquered. They've never even seen horses. When the Spanish and when they brought horses over, they thought they were like mythical creatures. A man on a horse, riding it, controlling it. It's fascinating, and it's like a spiritual thing. Like they came from the heavens almost. I don't know how to explain that, but go ahead and touch on that for me.
So yeah, no, they're really their first impression. Um, you know, about the Native Americans in Brazil, we don't have much resources because their culture was not it was not a written culture, so they didn't write that much their culture. Um, but um, we know some of the first impressions the Africans had when the Portuguese first got, and they wrote some things about how they were, how their skin were pale, like they were dead in the first place. They thought they traveled the big river, which was the ocean, uh, from the world of the dead to the world of the alive. You know what I mean? So they thought they were, some kind of, spirits or something like that, men with no toes, obviously because they were wearing, shoes and everything. Not shoes, but what I mean, boots and everything, so you couldn't see their toes and their feet. So and their skin was so hard, that you couldn't cut them because they were built, like, because obviously they were using, iron around their bodies with in armors and everything. But back to the Portuguese, um, they were one of the biggest slave traders as an empire that ever been in in this earth, and they did they did slaver the Native Americans, but also, other than the wars that they fed between those societies, that also helped, to exterminate the population. The diseases did a big part because the Native Americans, they were isolated for so long. Those populations that lived across all America, they were here for so long, isolated from the rest of the world, basically thousands and thousands of years, isolated, living their own life, by putting that way. So when the Portuguese got here, they brought a lot of diseases with them, and diseases that the the natives didn't knew, and they were not prepared for it, so they died very easily for like a common flu or something like that, because they also didn't know how to treat it, because they never faced such such a disease like that. So that also plays a big role on their control. And also, they were after they have the intention to really populate the place and make it a colony. They really wanted, to substitute one population for the other. So slavery and killing was really something. So it was really an activity, you know, and also the resources, the amount of slaves that they could get from Africa, from the African continent, could feed all that need of work. So they thought that market and that resource was, you know, unlimited. So it wasn't really a problem to, kill the slaves and kill the people that we already have in the continent, because it's not a big deal to bring more people from Africa.
That's a very interesting topic, and slavery essentially built almost every empire in history. Um, produ- uh, Getting people to do that manual labor built almost the whole world. Brazil is very interesting in the fact of it's really it had so many tribes, and almost all of them went extinct from diseases, from war, the Portuguese enslaving, many different factors. Um, what when was the change, and when was Brazil looking to build societies, civilization, real cities, and what did that look like?
So, um, in, in fact, Brazil was already it was a pretty developed place, and until its time of slavery, because Brazil was the last country to abolish slavery in the world, the very last country in 1888. So, and that's really late. It's basically like 100 years later than a lot of places in the American continent. So you can see a big difference, and you can see how tied up Brazil culture and Brazil history is on slavery and this what the slaves built in Brazil. And this is a very sensitive topic in Brazil's culture till nowadays, and I believe it's always going to be, because Brazil have so many social problems that are um a result of that past, and unsolved subjects about this big matter that basically affects whole society. Because you think about how Brazil built its economy, and a lot of the decisions that would took from the time had an important slavery had an important role in a lot of decisions that would made in Brazil, in the big picture Brazil, about it, politics, about how we would build our economy. You know what I mean? So and this is just looking in the big picture. This is not even talking about people's lives and the daily basis, and how is the cities in Brazil, and how is the city today in Brazil. Because we have the same Rio de Janeiro that was filled with slaves in the 1900s. It was basically, you know, 70% of population of those cities. Florianopolis, the city that I lived my whole life. Um, in the 1900s, 90% of the city population was slaves. Wow. And then you have a big change, over 100 years, and a lot of immigration in the beginning of the 20th century, and the very in the very last decades of the 19th century, and the very beginning of the 20th century. But it definitely has a big role, and also built Brazil's population, because 53% of Brazil's population identify themselves as blacks today. So they're a majority in Brazil. So if they're a majority in Brazil in population, they are a majority in Brazil in basically everything. You know what I mean? So a lot of Brazil religious aspects, a lot of Brazil cultural, musical, art. When you talk about art, when you talk about even the way Brazil built its own form of Portuguese, it's really tied with African culture, and all the heritage that Brazil have from that population that was brought from Africa, and that stays in the country, and that really, just how you said, built the whole country through the history.
So every section of Brazil's very different. Bahia, Florianopolis, where you're from in the south, Santa Catarina, Rio, Sao Paulo, business hub of the world. In Bahia, it's a lot of African descent. It's a lot of descent from slavery. You see that in their culture, their food, everything like we were talking about. Um, in the Amazon, you got Manaus, you got these regions. Tell us a little bit more about the regions and how different they are.
Um, a lot of yeah, Brazil's really a continent. If you take the whole size of the country, it's massive because Brazil, you know, Brazil's bigger north to south. Okay, but if you take Brazil's length, western point to eastern point, it's twice as long as the coast of Brazil and the coast of Africa. So Brazil is massive, and a lot of places in Brazil have their own accent, their own culture, their own recipes, and a lot of stuff like that. But the south of Brazil is really specific because the south of Brazil was the place where the European immigration was more, let's say successful. You know, I'm not saying good or bad. I'm saying successful in the way that what they wanted to do, it was able to be done. That's what I'm saying in a very pragmatic way. So it was really successful, and it's the only region where the majority of the population identify themselves as whites, even though we know that this is very discussable, and a lot of intellectuals discusses if this really something that you can really say, but the European immigration in south of Brazil is really big, and plays a really big part on its culture. And different places of Brazil, because of that, different places of Brazil like Bahia has way more its Portuguese, obviously, but way more its African heritage than the southern Brazil, I would say. So you can notice a lot of difference as also when we were talking about northern Brazil, we have a lot more of our Native American heritage alive right there, because you have a lot of it's something that people in that place, they really carry that heritage, and they really care about this matter, and Sao Paulo and Rio are pretty specific places, I would say, inside of Brazil. The city of Rio and the city of Sao Paulo, they're really, really specific places because they're worldwide centers. They're cities built about everything, every single thing you have about the world, but also in a big Brazilian way. Rio is obviously one of the, if not the biggest. I mean, yeah, you can say the biggest cultural center of what is Brazil's culture. Half of what you're talking about might happen in Rio or have its best version in the city of Rio. You know what I mean? Samba, a lot of the genres, the musical genres that we have, and a lot of our art, a lot of our poetry, a lot of our, a lot of our culture, and what we export to the world about Brazil. And Sao Paulo, what you can say, um, big, big, massive city, and it always been a big center for Brazil since its colonial era. It's always been a big center. It's always been a place where Brazil kind of spins around it, and everything kind of happens in Sao Paulo, and you know it's a very important place, and it's a very, very different, very distinguished place, not only in Brazil but around the globe, I would say for sure.
Yeah, I know Sao Paulo is definitely a business hub for the world. Um, Almost every nation has a stake there, and you'll see people from all over the world in Sao Paulo. And some of my good friends live in Sao Paulo. I wanted to touch on Florianopolis. I was there just a few months ago for a week. I love Florianopolis. It's a massive island in the south of Brazil. Tell me more about where you're from in Florianopolis.
So, yeah, Florianopolis is a beautiful, beautiful, amazing place. Um, and growing up there as a kid, I moved there when I was 6. My mom and dad were just divorcing, and we moved from Porto Alegre to Florianopolis, and it was really calm at the time in the beginning of the in the 2000s, I think 2004 probably we moved there. It was really calm. It was one of the smallest state capitals in Brazil, and it's a really really beautiful place. And childhood there was just just a regular Brazilian kid childhood, just riding my bike all over the streets, and meeting with friends in the end of the street in a sand pitch, you know. We say in Portuguese, we say chão batido, which is just a dirty pitch, and playing soccer, all day. Um, doing kites, and doing kite battle, and when you cut off the other guy line, you just have to run over it, and who's the one who grab it first is the new owner of the kite. So that's a big thing when you're a kid, bro. Yeah, there's $2 right there in that kite. So yeah, you have to run fast to not lose your $2. I mean your two reais. But um, it was really fun, and I grew up with my older brother. My mom and my dad were really they were always there for me. But Florianopolis is a really really cool place, and also allows me to growing up skateboarding and principally surfing, which was is a big is a big part of my identity. Is a big part of my life. Is something that I really miss. Something that really it's a lot of moments, and a lot of friendships that I also made. One of my best friends, like we always play like, bro, we're just friends because we surf together, because we don't basically do anything else but surf. And he was one of my great friends. Shout out for João. Um, in the undergrad, and Florianopolis it's a really cool place in southern Brazil.
I want to touch on, I'm very curious about surf culture. So in Hawaii, you have a surf culture which is known to be a little bit more toxic, right? I want to know how the locals treat outsiders when you want to surf, and if you're allowed to, and what's kind of the surf culture there?
Well, bro, that's a sensitive subject for surfers. Localism has always been part of surf, and it kind of has to deal with the real the roots of surfing, because for Hawaiians, and as long as I know, as long as I'm concerned, for Hawaiians in the past, surfing was really really important in their religious life and their rituals. It was just like it was not a regular thing. It's something that you do a big wave. You surf, and you surf that spot. That's an important thing in society. That's a symbol. That's a ritual that has a deep meaning. For Hawaiians in the very beginning, and a lot of spots were sacred for surfing when they first started. and kind of that culture of, my spot, the special spot with the special wave, and that has a lot with deal with how surf is, like its characteristics. I mean, because it's practical characteristics, because you have to be in a good day, in a good condition, in a right spot, in a right moment, and do the right thing. You have one chance to catch the gray wave, and every single surfer's looking for that, bro. That's the best feeling. That's what you're looking for. That's what makes you stoke. That's what make you get off of water and say, well, that it worth all the all the effort, because that's a big effort surfing. A lot of people quit surfing because it's insane the effort that you have to make to catch a wave. Goddamn. But localism in Florianopolis, it's a big thing, and a lot of locals take it really serious. And surf has a lot of rules, to be honest. You have to know how to behave yourself inside of water, otherwise you're gonna be eaten alive, bro. If you just get into a random place, and this is all over the globe. If you go to Australia, if you go to Brazil, if you go to Peru, if you go to Hawaii, if you go to Portugal, if you go to Indonesia, if you go to Tahiti, if you go to Africa, if you go to the wrong spot with the wrong behavior, people will not like it, and people will check you out for real quick, bro, real quick. And this is not something very cool for surfing for me, because I also grew up in skateboarding, and skateboarding, I understand this really different. The skate park is always there. It's always gonna be the same way. The skate spot, you can skate it 100 times in the same hour if you want. you know. And surfing is just not like that. It's just not like that. It's very special for you. Like, I've surfed over 20 years of my life. If I count every single second I spend on a wave, it's not gonna make an hour, bro. It's not gonna make. I believe it's not gonna make an hour. For real, it's not gonna make 40 minutes. On top of a wave, in the ocean, a lot of time, and more than, I don't know, 10,000 hours for sure. But on top of the board, standing up on the wave, I don't think it makes an hour if you count every single second. Just like a soccer player every game don't spend more than 1 minute with the ball. In the 90 minutes, he doesn't spend one more than 1 minute, a single player with the ball. You know, so it's like, you know what I mean. So it's very special, but I think it could be a little better. But also, it's there's a lot of good people, and it is a good culture. To have. Florianopolis is a very cool place because it has such a big surfing culture.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that with me. I'm just trying to learn as I go because I'm not a surfer. I've tried, but I haven't had enough practice yet. I would love to go do more. I want you to talk about some of your favorite beaches and kind of the process of surfing. Like, I know there's like a queue out there, a line, right? To wait in, so you got to wait for your turn. Tell us a little bit more about that and some of your favorite places to surf, your favorite beaches.
So my favorite places to surf is obviously the place that I grew up surfing in when I was a kid in the south coast of Santa Catarina. But also a lot of places in Florianopolis, like the Caldeira Beach, the Campeche Beach, where I lived. Um, Great spot for waves, great spot for waves, for real. Um, but all over the year, by the way. But um, the process of surfing is, when usually when people say that they want to start surfing, I would say, man, be prepared to be consistent, and to, you have to really want it. Because I would say if you're starting from scratch, you don't know anything, you don't know how to get into the board and paddle and, duck the wave and, get outside and, kind of get into the wave and, everything. And if you don't have, you know, the capacity, like the physical capacity to do it, I would say for you, you would take at least 1 year to, start getting into the wave and, start learning to, how to stand up. And then another year, another 6 months for a year for you to, really start, start in a get into a place where you can start developing your surfing and really get better at surfing. So I would say 2 years for you to really start practicing surfing, even though you're already practicing a lot and like doing it every single freaking day and training a lot as well. I remember my younger brother when he was 16. He asked me, he got at me and said, "Hey, bro, I wanna learn how to surf." My mom said I was too young, but now I'm 15. I wanna learn. I wanna go with you. I wanna catch the big waves. I wanna do that. And I was like, okay, hold on, and just do 10 pull-ups and 20 push-ups for me right now, without missing a single rep. If you do that for me, I'll take you to the beach with a board. Other than that, you're not going, because it's going to be dangerous for you, bro. You have to be, you have to be able to, control yourself, bro. Worked out hard for 6 months as 15-year-old to build up a whole, back muscles. And he was back like, I want to go to the beach. And I was like, okay, I do it for me. He did. And I was like, okay, bro can take you. Tomorrow morning, 5 a.m., wake up, take a glass of water, banana, let's go. You know what I mean? But yeah, it was a long way for him, because he started like I started. Literally, my older brothers when I was a kid and my mom, they were crazy. They were like, I was 5-year-old and 80-year-old, and they threw me in like skating and surfing. It was like insane, with my older brothers. The 90s was built a little bit different, you know what I mean? But they were just like, 80-year-old boy, you can go surf with your, 10, 12-year-old and your 15-year-old brother, just no big deal, but so I don't even remember when I started to skate or surfing or anything like that. People ask me like, but how was for you? I don't even remember. I was so young that I don't remember like learning how to skateboard and surf. For me was like I the oldest memories that I have, I was already doing it. You know what I mean? But it really worked. When you catch your first wave and you're like, bro, I'm doing it. It's like the best feeling. You know, some people say it's better than sex, and I already missed the date for a good day of surfing, and I can say to you, bro, it worked.
When I was in Brazil, I mean, I seen the surf culture is so huge. There's at least half a dozen guys out there with $10,000 cameras, taking pictures and have their own little business. But I want to talk about kind of some of the places on Florianopolis. If you're listening to this, Florianopolis, a couple places that I went was, and that I love, is Santo Antonio for sunset. Great seafood, great sunsets. It's a beautiful place to go and enjoy the evening. A couple other places, Barra da Lagoa. There's a big lagoon. One of the coolest neighborhoods wrapped around it, and there's a boardwalk. There's so much to do in Florianopolis as far as outdoor activities, hiking, the Campeche Trail that takes you up to that high point looking over the private beach. Beautiful. I want to talk about some of your favorite spots in Florianopolis. What do you like about it?
Definitely one of my favorite spots in Florianopolis is Campeche. It's a great, great beach, great waves, great views, great sunrise. You have the little island right in front um, that has the same name. And it's also a beautiful place. I worked there for a season as a lifeguard when I served the military, the fireman department of Santa Catarina. It's an amazing place. You have a lot of Native Americans. They I don't know how to say it in English actually, but when they build up the certain rocks and given a specific shape, and and they paint the walls, and you have everything in the back of the island facing the open sea. It's really beautiful historic site also. And also the nature there is just like stunning. But the prettiest place has ever been by far. And the trail that you have in Campeche is also the Morro do Lampião. It's a beautiful view for a sunset. And Florianopolis has amazing places and some well conserved, in matter of nature places also. Lagoinha do Leste is it's a hidden beach that you have to do a 1 hour and a half trail over a big hill, to get there, and there's no construction at all, and no one lives there in anything, so it's a really cool place. And well, I mean, there's a lot of cool places in Florianopolis, and also being a capital, you also have a lot of nightlife, and you have places to go, you have culture, you have history to visit. It was a big port back in the colonial era, so you have a big historic sites also in downtown Florianopolis. So yeah, it's definitely a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place.
And yeah, it's one of the major hubs for Brazil. Still, Santa Catarina. They did build that bridge. It was disconnected from the mainland, but they did build a bridge. I mean, it's a massive island. It has a downtown airport. I mean, we're talking a massive island here, and absolutely stunning. Every part of it. I truly enjoyed Florianopolis. Um, it it just everyone was so happy. And the people I met there, Leo, that was working at the hostel, that took me out on the kayak, and we had a sunset and a sunrise out in the lagoa on the kayaks. Just an incredible place to be. I'm sad I only got to spend a week there, but I will definitely be back. My good friend Isabel is from there. She was the one who invited me. Speak more about your service. You said you were a firefighter. Um, what was that like? So you had to volunteer. What was going on there?
So this happened when I was in the second year of my undergrad. I was 20. I already have um, I already have presented me at 18 at the army because it's mandatory in Brazil. But I was sent home. But then actually I was in the fireman department, military fireman department of Santa Catarina. But I was a professional lifeguard hired by the military in a volunteer service. Um, and I spent 5 years work as a volunteer professional lifeguard for the military fire department. It was a great experience for me. It really changed me. I was kind of doing. At the time, I was in my 20s. I was kind of just living the shit. I was just like in the first year of my undergrad, not caring that much about stuff. You know what I mean? But you have to start take things serious, and in some point, and it definitely helps me a lot. And it's a big part of my personality and a big part of what I am, because the experience that I had really shaped me. Just the process. I felt like just the 6 month process of working out and training myself to be able to be a candidate, even to do the course, already changed me a lot, because it was a lot of discipline. It was a lot of eating right, training 3 times a day. I was training, like, running 2 times a day, doing calisthenics 1 time, and swimming every single day of the week, working and studying at night. I did a night course at my undergrad in history. So I was studying from 6 p.m. to 10:30, 11 p.m. back home. And usually when I got home, like at midnight, I went off for running, and then do calisthenics, run back home, sleep. Next day, 6 a.m., 7 a.m., wake up, go swimming, back, work. You know what I mean? Like, just all that process really locked in. You know what I mean? In a goal, changed me for real. Like, even my dad, my mom was already dead at the time. She already have died at the time, but my dad was really, he was really impressed. It was just like, you changed a lot. You look like a different person. You're like, bro, 6 months ago with the long hair, I had a pretty long hair. It's just, you know, doing the shit, smoking fucking weed and doing every single shit that, you know, drinking a lot, and like bars in the undergrad, and doing whatever shit that comes in my mind, and 6 months later was just like locked in, drink only water, no even fucking juice, bro. It was like just like locked in for real, just to not, a lot of the things that I done at the time, it was just like to not mess up my mindset for real. Like, no, I don't do that. I don't go to the bar. No, but you can go and not drink, bro. I'm not going because I don't want to fuck the mindset. Not going.
That's an intense run. I was wondering, being in shape like that is very hard to do. At a younger age, it's a little easier, but it still takes a ton of discipline to have a structure and be able to have a mindset like that and lock in. I think you're locked in at that point. Is that service mandatory? I want to go into that. Was your service mandatory by the Brazilian government? And then we're going to go into where you went to university and what you studied and kind of your experience there.
No, the service was volunteer, but we also have like a compensation for our efforts, so you kind of get a salary out of there. Even though it's like a volunteer job, you can stop doing it the moment that you want. It's like it's really flexible. But I really took that as a job, and I was just like, I was really focused and live it, and had experience out of it. And I was really like, for 5 years, the working there and studying history was basically my life, bro. My whole life was just like serving, workout, train myself, study about first aid and everything, and all those things, you know getting better, and working, and working as a lifeguard was basically everything that I did for the 5 years that I was when I was in a in the undergrad. And it was a volunteer service, and I'm so really glad that I had this opportunity, and I'm so glad that I was physically, mentally able to perform that. And I lost the count on how many people I saved, bro. I don't even know how many people I saved. I just know that I saved a lot, and unfortunately, just one guy died in all those 5 years and the days that I was working. Um, it was my very first experience actually. It was really really bad, really really bad. But I could, me and my team and all the support, we could give him another, day of life, and then he could be with his family. But unfortunately, his body didn't support all the stress and everything we had to do, to bring him back. But um, um, it was really changing for me. That was a really changing experience. I remember being at work, and then my commander just pushed me to the side in the middle of the shift and say, hey bro, hey Daniel, I don't want you to be affected by it. You did a great job. You're a great man. You're a great lifeguard. You did everything right. I was there. But the guy that you saved yesterday, he died today. But I just have to know that you just have to know that you have to keep going. But I really really started to take it serious on that point, you know what I mean? And made everything that I could to not lose anyone else in all those years of service. And I'm really glad that I was able to perform it, and God could help me, my team, everyone could, help me to do it. And that's a big part of what I am today, and what is my experiences, and the things that I lived. And it was a big time for me in my life, because also the undergrad in history changed me a lot, obviously, because it's not a regular, I think studying every single subject, every single discipline of knowledge, faculty of knowledge, it's important. It's really changing. But when you talk about history, and I'm a little suspicious to say it, but when you talk about history, you're talking about criticizing your own values, the things that your personality, and the things that you think, and the things that you add your identity to. You have to criticize all of them and understand that they don't belong to you. They belong to your time. They belong to your society that you're born in and you're shaped in, because we're immensely shaped by our environment. And the story that I was just told is a proof of that. I put myself in an environment, and a different environment, and that environment shaped me and shaped my identity, shaped the things that I think and the way I face life in every single aspect of it. And it was just by putting myself in a position for 5 years, you change someone's life, you know and so it was also really changing for me. It was really enlightening. It was something that really said, feed my fire and my interest in history and in life and society and in humankind and studying, you know so it changed. It was a time of a lot of change for me.
And I kind of see you're a very gregarious person. Um, you're obviously Brazilian. You personify Brazil. People love you. You know how to talk to people. You know how to treat people. We serve together, and I don't think any other server gets the same reactions out of people that you do. I think you have a talent to a social talent that connects you with people better than a lot of other people I've seen. And that is Brazil. That you are an outgoing people, and I love that. I am too, and that's why I've have so many Brazilian friends such as yourself. Speak on the culture of Brazil. What makes it so lively, so outgoing, gregarious? What makes it so sexual and fun and dance? But go into that a little bit. I would love to hear about it.
So I think Brazil, definitely the African heritage has a big role. Its music, um, its cultural aspects, everything, religion, their rituals, their practices, um, how they produce their music and their art and everything. Africa is so diverse. Africa is so rich in all aspects of its culture and all its different places. And Brazil is just a big, a big result of what Africa has to deal with Brazil's history. And I love that. I really love that aspect of Brazilian culture and the music that we produce and the way Brazil produced its own form of Portuguese and its accent and some words is also really etched to how the Africans would speak the Portuguese when they were learning and gathering their own words and everything. And so Brazil is very close to Africa in that point, I think. And this is so amazing about Brazilian culture because we have a lot of everything that we imported from the world in Brazil, and Brazil is just one big result of that. That doesn't mean that it's harmonious every single time. We know it's not. The universe is not, but it's beautiful either way. And all that mix and all that chaos in a good way, of culture and mixture and everything. And also Brazilian religiousness and everything that you know it's included in Brazil culture, and obviously the Brazilian way. It's a big thing. It's a big thing in our culture, like the way that we do things, and this is also a big joke between Brazilians, because comparing to soccer, we know how to dribble, you know how to get our ways to stuff. And I think that's beautiful because Brazilians, they have this specific way to interact, and we're also very respectful I think in most ways, but we are very open, and we are very welcoming, and that's a big part of Brazil's culture, and that's a big part of what Brazil really is, because Brazil was always open for everything and everyone that would migrate to Brazil, and Brazil, because of that, Brazil and its culture, what rather it's also very conservative in some opinions, in some ways. It's also a very free culture. You said sexually speaking, it's a very free culture. Sexually speaking, for women, for men. You know, um, Regardless, a lot of conservative aspects. Everything is mixed in the big bowl of culture. Everything happens in the same time, but Brazil is also, you can see it in the way we dance, the dance, the samba, the dance that we produce, the music that we produce, and also just our way to to understand ourselves and understand our bodies and the world and everything. So Brazil is a really open country and culture in every meaning of it. When we relate to people, when we expose our culture and how we produce our art and our music and everything. So this is one of the things that I like about Brazil the most, and this is really something that I really brought to myself. Now that I'm here in the United States for so long, when I spent the time here before, and now that I'm here, living here, being a resident, I really, like to focus on that, and always reminding myself and getting in touch with my Brazilian roots and my Brazilian culture, because I think it's so enriching when you have such a exchange of culture, and that's also, I'm always excited to know more about American culture. We work together, so I'm always asking people about things when something happened. What is your opinion on that? What do you think? Because this exchange is just something that I really appreciate.
That's awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that. I wanted to touch on the music for a second. We got samba, it's a sexy dance. But also, my personal favorite is Brazilian funk. I know it's dirty, but the beat is so contagious. It's like a blend of hip hop, electronic. Can you go into it and what kind of it was the roots of that, and why is it so damn contagious?
So the roots of the Brazilian funk, or the funky carioca, how we say in Brazil, it obviously started in Rio, but by a DJ from São Paulo, DJ Malboro. He was one of the first ones to export the beats and do different setups with the disco in some places in São Paulo and Rio. And then a lot of the music started to develop from that. Obviously, everything is so different today than it was in the 90s, back in the day when the movement started. And you have big funky artists from the 90s, and their music is way different than it is after the 2000s and 2010s. But the thing is, the rhythm of funky is it's danceable, it's contagious, and it's sexy, and everyone kind of get into the beat, and it's also very free, because you can do whatever you want, you can say whatever you want, and this is a big Brazilian thing. and it's a simple it's also a simple beat, so a lot of people can do it in when they don't have that much resources inside of the favelas in Brazil. So, and that's where the you know the precious stones are. We know that because all those soccer players that we exported to the world, they come from those places. So we know the real jewelry is inside of those places. And you have a lot of big good artists today that started on this genre, and it's just so big in Brazil. Like, people love it so much. But also bossa nova, and in the beginning of the 20th century, it was a very, very well known and very exported genre from Brazil, with Tom Jobim, Vinicius de Moraes, and other guys. And also pagode and samba, obviously. very well known, and they're insanely huge in Brazil. And I think all those, danceable rhythms and, involving, beats, they has to deal with the African heritage and how they build their music. Because if you take ancient rituals that involve music, um, it's more common to have, um, mono frequency, sounds in music. Like, they always stay in the same frequency. They don't change. They don't have a break. But African music always had this, a specific um aspect of how they produce their sounds. And this is so much more, involving. And it's also a big thing in every one of the genres that basically are, the best ones that everyone know: jazz, soul, R&B, rock. It all started with black music, and obviously with the heritage that people brought to United States, brought to Brazil, brought to, Spanish, to Hispanic America. And then you have cumbia, you have a lot of genres, you have reggaeton, you have reggae, and in Jamaica, which is also a country that is really deeply involved by its African roots and African heritage. And so all of those genres have a big influence of, African heritage and African, ancient music. So um, this is what I think. This is a big part of why those, genres are so, dancing, so involving. And
So I love the music in Brazil. I dance. I love to dance. I'm not that good at it, but I want to kind of dive into more about you as a teacher and kind of some of your stories and your experiences.
um, my experience in the undergrad to study history and be a teacher, like basically the course is divided in two. So you have a lot of disciplines just to learn, like, about history itself, and you have a lot of classes that you just study the how to be a teacher, and how to teach history and everything like that. Psychology classes, to understand brain development and everything like that, on kids. So that experience really changed me, because you get in touch with a lot of knowledge that you don't just, put into the classroom, but also put it into your life. And my experience as a teacher, I mean, it could have been better. The places that I teached in Brazil over the 2 years that I was there, it's amazing places. I get in touch with amazing kids, and be with them every day, and trying to, inspire them to have the same interest that I had in history, and kind of do the same thing my dad was doing with me when I was a kid, but doing with a lot of kids at once. It was just so inspiring for me. It was just something that really gives me, personal realization. And, see them learning the things that I learned in through my life in the undergrad. Understand history, understand complex concepts that, I was into it since I was a kid. So, I know how I understand it when I was a kid. So, like, I just feel like, in a lot of opportunities, I had a big one in one of the in a bilingual school that I teached in, and we have like a parent meeting and everything, but they were presenting a fair, and they presented a lot of their history projects. And they explained it was about time, and they explained the complex concept of what is the different concept of time in history, because you have a lot. And it was just such a complex, difficulty discussion about the concept and its definition. The parents were so surprised about what the kids were saying, and they didn't understand anything. I could see in their faces that they were like, I don't know what this 10-year-old kid it's saying to me about concept and history and historiography, and how do we write history, the different concepts of time, and how the different times are related in history and everything. And they were just like, they were with the big eyes looking at their kids. It's like, this kid, wow. And this was so inspiring for me, because I saw a lot of myself in those kids, and I really had the opportunity, to be a good influence to them and do something that really goes beyond my interests or go beyond myself. And it's just like, I feel like teaching is something that it's a gift that it's given to the other, so it's something that realizes you deeply, because you don't have interest in it. It's not for you. It's not your. It's meant to be done for others. So it was really changing for me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I know teaching can be difficult, especially with younger kids. The attention spans. I know my attention span was hardly anything. I all I could think about was skateboarding. Go back, get on my skateboard. So it sounds like you're really passionate about that, passionate about history, and your love for Brazil. But I know it's hard to make a living in Brazil, and when the opportunity arises to travel, maybe to the U.S., North America, Canada, whatever, Europe, or wherever it may be, to make a little extra money, a lot of people take it, and I would too. I want you to speak on, coming to the U.S., how that opportunity arose, and, your kind of experience.
So, in fact, I was really disappointed not with the experience of teaching, but the real pragmatical results of the work in the industry, by saying, because after 5 years of service, I collected a little bit of injuries, for working out that much and always putting myself on the high top of my rip, and being in my full potential, my full physical potential. This is not something always very good for your job, for your body, when when you do that much effort for so long without a single stop. Your body kind of start taking its price, because it was literally every day for 5 years. It's just like, and the very top is like always pushing myself forward, always pushing a little bit forward, because I have that feeling like, bro, you if you don't do enough, someone else is going to die in your hand. You can't be that guy. You can't be a failure. You can't do that. If you fail, it's not like, okay, I failed, I'm just gonna correct my mistake, bro. If you commit a mistake, someone's going to die. Someone is going to lose their mom, just like you did. Or even worse, a mom is going to lose her son. And it's going to be on you. So that was my mind during the whole time. So I was always pushing a little bit forward, always pushing a little bit more, always taking myself to the freaking limit every single day, nonstop, every time. And this kind of effort, it really, asks for its price. So, so I went out of the military. I had a little bit of money saved after the 5 years, but I was a little bit disappointed with how much I was making with as a teacher. And it's not, obviously it's not enough to pay rent and everything. So it's always in debt. Um, and I had a friend that just was here in the United States doing an internship, and he was back to our hometown. Hey, let's grab a beer and everything. Went to talk with him and Enrico. Shout out to Enrico. And he was like, bro, I was just there, and I was like, I told him all my concerns, and he was like, bro, I was just like you, 10 years working at the same job, doing the same thing, bro. I sold my car, did that shit, and I'm gonna tell you, if you want to see something different, if you want to have something to clear your mind, clear your ideas, or like just live something different, get outside of the bubble, outside of the box. Go to another country. If you go into United States, I know a place. I'm going next year. I was like, bro, don't have to. You don't have even to finish that sentence. I'm going. I'm going. I just want to get out of here because lived my whole life in the same place, served, studied, undergrad, every single thing in the same town, living in the same neighborhood, I was just like, bro, I'm done with it. I want to do something different. I want to see something different. Just to know if, like, this is everything I want, okay, I'm going to check it out. Just to, make sure. And being in the United States, really, a lot of, another thing that really changed me, was a big experience. And, the life here, like, I love Brazil. I would love to live there. I love the place where I lived, where I was raised. But I also love United States, and I also loved the opportunities that I had here. Even though I was a outlander, a foreigner, even though I was starting from scratch, barely didn't know any English and anything like that, I could, I had the resources to provide myself a good experience at the beginning with a little bit of safeness and to start, and it really paid me off, and that's why I decided, to live a different chapter of my life in the United States, which is what I'm doing now. And it's really something that I recommend for everyone. I had a friend that went to Portugal right now, and he's doing a whole year in Portugal. Shout out to Mateuzinho. My brother, know him from long time. And I told him, I told him when I was back to Brazil from the United States, I told him, bro, you need to get out of here. I know exactly where you at. Lived here your whole life. I did the same thing, bro. I'm just telling you. I went there. It's just exploded my head. Just telling you. It's going to change your life. It's going to... Just do it. Don't think, but it's going to be that way. What I'm going to do. Don't think twice, bro. Just, get a plan. Decided on it. That's what I'm going to do. Just do it. And, like, bro's there. It's living a great time, I believe. Talked to him a couple weeks ago, and it's really really something that I recommend for everyone. Like, if you lived your life in the same place, or if you like traveled a little bit but go live somewhere else, and it can be inside of your country if you don't want that big of a change. If your country is really big, maybe you can have a huge change, like Brazil, like I know United States, bigger countries like that. You have pretty different places, but go to another country definitely to have new references, new experiences. It's just something really good for your life.
Yeah, that's, you know, the story of a lot of people from around the world. They want to come to the U.S., and I fully support it. We need great people here. Um, and I know you're highly educated. You're trilingual. You know Portuguese, Spanish, and English. Your English is getting better every day. Every time I talk to you. Let's talk about a little bit. We're going to go back to a little bit about Brazilian culture, and I want you to go into it and talk a little bit about the food of Brazil and what you like about it.
Um, Definitely one of my favorites is it's churrasco. It's from the state that I was born into. My mom was a big cooker of churrasco. Um, she did like no one else. Goddamn, that shit was good. But definitely one of my favorites. Feijoada is also one of my favorites, 100%. And Brazilian hot dogs, bro, because we just do it. We just do it. We just build it different. We put a lot of stuff in it, like mash. Some people put mashed potatoes, cheese, potato sticks. So every sort of thing, salad. Vinagrete, which is just like a little bit different of a pico de gallo. Um, it's so good. And what I like about Brazilian food, it's like the sort of flavors that we have because we have a lot of flavors, and we also eat a lot of fruit, and salad with our meals. And I think that's so good because you have Brazilian food is it's also pretty refreshing. Brazilians love good salad, and a standard Brazilian meal has to have rice and beans, which is by itself almost a complete meal. And nutrients. Talking about nutrients, you don't have that much protein in it, but you basically have good carbs, every one of the vitamins, iron, lots of iron. You have a lot of nutrients. So and then you have a little bit of salad with a tomato, with a lettuce, with something, with a raw onion, with a anything you would like to put on that. You have an egg and you have a piece of meat, steak, a pork, a chicken, um, usually a steak. So that's a classic Brazilian meal. That's the meal that every Brazilian wants to have in their lunch break in the middle of the work. Every Brazilian is going to look for a plate like this with those kind of food. And I think this is great about you know our food culture because we eat a lot of healthy food. A lot of the basis of Brazilian diet, it's very healthy food. And it also has intense sort of flavors because if you go to Bahia, you have the acarajé, which is like insanely spicy, made out of shrimp with a special dough that you deep fry, and you put then the oil in it, and it's like, bro, it's insanely good. It's going to burn your inside, but it's insanely good, spicy. Um, and you have a lot of dishes. You have the tropeiro beans, which is a classic from Minas Gerais with bacon, um, flour, um, cabbage, beans, everything, a lot of pork meat, everything mixed together in a big bowl. Um, and then you put that with a lot of different kinds of meat, and it's just so tasteful. And every single part of Brazil has you have the acai on the north, that they eat very different. It's not the ice cream acai. It's the they eat with flour and fish. But you also have the acai ice cream, which is insanely good. Um, so you have a lot of flavors. That's what I like. You have a lot of different flavors, and if you're in a Brazilian restaurant, you have 100 options of how you would build your plate. You know what I mean? And I think this is amazing about our food culture.
You know, that's funny. You say Brazilians really love healthy food, and I totally agree with that. Brazilians love whole foods, um, fruits, vegetables. It's a big part of your diet. And I remember I was embarrassed a little bit. I went to the grocery store with my buddy Leo that I met at the hostel. Such a good, great guy. Shout out Leonardo. Um, but we went our separate ways we went to the grocery store, went our separate ways, and ended up back together at the checkout. My buggy was vastly different than his. I had some fruit, but I also had chips, processed stuff, which is a more of an American thing. He comes up to the counter. He has no chips in there, all vegetables, fruits, and just whole foods. And I was just like, it made me think a little bit. I was like, wow, like I am not eating right. Like, and it, you don't think about it until, because it's such a habit. Old habits died hard. But it was just such a drastic contrast between what we were buying, and I think that's fascinating. The utilization of fresh ingredients is very important to Brazilians, and I love moqueca. A spicy seafood stew from Bahia. Isabel that invited me there, her family, Deborah, Robert, and Vitor, made me a beautiful moqueca, and treated me just with the best hospitality. We went to a barbecue, to asado. Shout out to all of them. Also Isabel's brother, Philip. Um, I enjoy the moqueca, feijoada, just some rice, beans, chicken. Simple stuff. Simple's good. Acai, of course. I got to try so many different things, and I'm so grateful for that. What do you think is a big cultural difference between people in the United States and people in Brazil that you have noticed?
The biggest cultural difference when we talk about food is how people feed their kids. It's like insane. And I already had some people like, well, it's hard to make a little kid to eat different things. Yes, if you don't get the kid used to it. When I was a kid, I was used to every single thing since since the age that I wasn't able to, pick what I was eating or not. It was just like I was hungry, crying. My mom just gave me, blended carrots, made a pasta with a lot of carrots and vegetables and gave me. You know what I mean? Um, like natural with whole ingredients and mixed with a little bit of water. So you give your little kid. When I grow up, eat carrots for me. It was just something so simple because they were also seasoned, and you know what I mean. So if you, it's like insane the difference, the way people feed their kids. Like I just see kids here like eating chicken tenders or fries or plain burgers and stuff like that. That's everything that they eat, and it's like it's not a problem for a kid eat something like that one or two times of a good quality, good quality burger and stuff like that. But every single time it's kind of weird because this is not good for health environment, a health system, and developing. You know what I mean? Um, but also another big difference. It's how Brazilians, and this is a well-known fact about Brazilian culture, but um how people, do friends. You know, in Brazil, you have a best friend in like 2 hours, and then the guy is your best friend, and you invite him to go to your mom's house, so your mom's going to do something for you guys to have on dinner and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And it's just like we're just so open. Where I'm from, it's a little bit less like that. But when I went to Minas Gerais, it was just like people there are so welcoming that it's like it's it's a little bit weird. So welcoming they are, because it's like they're so welcome. They meet you, and at 10 minutes they say, "Come to my house and have dinner, right now. My wife is going to do dinner for us right now." It's like, what, bro? I just met you 10 minutes ago. Yeah, exactly. And I like you. You know what I mean? So we're pretty open. So I think this is a big difference between those cultures. Even though I have pretty good American friends, and a lot of people in the first place said, "Well, don't think you're gonna like them much. The guys are not very open." But people here, as long as in my experience, the places that I visit in the United States, people are welcoming. People are excited for you to be here. People are like, it's a very welcoming environment as well. But Brazil is just like something else. I don't know. I think Brazil is a very specific place in this aspect.
That's very interesting. That's a great take. You know, you and I live in Park City, Utah. We live in a ski resort town. We live in an insulated bubble. We definitely are lucky, and I think your take on food and American food is dead on. We have some of the worst food in the world here. We have the worst diets in the world here. Um, uh, we're an obese culture, and that is true partly because of pharmaceuticals, FDA passing stuff and allowing chemicals and allowing people to get addicted to this food. But that's a podcast in itself. Um, and like the opportunities in Brazil are very slim. I want to bring it back to salary. So, is it true that the minimum wage in Brazil is 200 reais, which would equate to maybe 60, $80 US dollars?
Um, the thing in fact is not. In fact, the current minimum wage in Brazil for the federal law is 1400, around 1400 reais, which is divided by 5 by the more or less by the currency today. So this would be about, I don't know, not good at math, but this would be about what?
$300 around 200 something. So I was
Yeah.
way off there. So thank you for sharing that with me. I'm always learning. Always want to learn more.
Oh no, yeah. So let's keep on that. So $200 $300 around. Um, and this is very low. But a lot of careers and a lot of professions, and a lot of opportunities that you have, like it happened with me, you end up getting less than that, even though it's the minimum wage for a person get, for her, like tax excluded. But there's a lot of ways that they can, build their ways to, not have to pay you that amount of money, and a lot of people in Brazil do way less than that. And I would say in, I don't know, 80% of the places in Brazil, especially in the biggest capitals, that is way too less money for you to afford a life alone. Like just you paying your rent, or or paying your house, having a car, paying your bills, going to the market, and doing everything you do, buy everything that every one of the stuff that you have to buy, in order, to have a normal life these days, like a computer, cell phone, and everything, basic life. This is way too less for you to have the basic of the basics. So a lot of people in Brazil, with their careers and their profession, they live like in a minimum of the minimum, the edge of, and it's not surprising that the depth rate in Brazil for, individuals, it's so high, because people have to, get in debt in order, to afford for everything that they need in their lives, that they have a family and they have a kid, and they, and there's a lot of other situations around all that environment that just make life in Brazil, I mean, economically speaking, for normal people, really hard, to take, really hard, to make it, you know. So I think that's also a big reason why people, when they have their opportunity, to go to another place, or they have their opportunity to, or they create their own opportunities, it's it's a result of that, and a lot of the wrong things that also happen, like narco trafficking is, and crime rate and everything like that. It's just, it's it's not just, but it's also a big part, a result of how the environment and the country is built, and what opportunities people really have in the most fragile, and the most, vulnerable, places and situations, and levels in society, in it's also, those are the most vulnerable places, are also the places where the crime rate, the narco trafficking and everything, and all of that, the lack of education, the lack of, um, everything, opportunity, the basic health and everything like that. It's make itself present. So, this is not a coincidence. This is intensely related. Those two is a cause and a consequence, basically. You know what I mean? So, the environment also create, its own. It's a heterofitting, system, where the difficulty and the lack of opportunities in the environment and everything creates the ambience to have, the environment to have more crime, more vulnerable situations, and that also, create that environment. And one thing, it's just leading into the other, consequently.
Yeah, you're speaking on a vicious cycle that keeps people stuck, keeps people in their country, not able to make money, anything. And I think most every country's government around the world is corrupt in some way or another, some more than others. South America being, most of the countries are pretty, their governments are pretty corrupt. They steal from the people. Um, uh, Brazil not being excluded in that. USA not being excluded in that. And I know everyone's just searching for a better opportunity and they're trying to get out. And it's hard to even come to the United States, plane ticket, everything. It's just so unattainable for an average person in some off village that's a smaller town. How do they get these opportunities? It's obviously they move to the bigger cities, Rio, Sao Paulo, to chase after those, and to be around wealth. But um, how does someone in Brazil get ahead? I mean, would it be safe to say, for the most part, for like an average person, if you really wanted that opportunity, you would have to come to the U.S. or somewhere with more opportunities. You can make money and then go back. I know a lot of people in Brazil do that, which is cool. Everyone needs opportunity. Everyone needs a better life, a basic life, like you were talking about. Basic amenities, basic necessities that is 2024. So many of these cultures are behind, and not for a lack of natural resources. Like Brazil is very naturally rich, but there's some people hoarding that money and taking that money, and it's always a small group of very intelligent people that end up with that. And like you said, it's a breeding ground for crime. Once you have people that are for so many years held down, especially in this day and age, when they can get on Instagram, they're poor, get on Instagram and see all these people living these opulent and luxurious lifestyles, and it sets in motion. It's like, okay, well, fuck you. You're not going to take care of me. I'm going to take something. And not to say there are evil people out there that do commit crime just for the sake of it. But I think what you're touching on is that most people just want opportunity.
Oh, yeah, I think this is a very sensitive point when we're talking about the difference between the first world and the third world, like South America and North America. I mean, USA, Canada, and talking about some places in Europe and some places in Asia, also like Japan. This is a big difference because you have a whole different. I feel like you have a whole different environment and a whole different set of opportunities and things that you can do and things that are provided to you. I was really shocked when I first came to the U.S. just by realizing, just the landscapes, the views that you have from inside the cities and on the side of the roads and the highways. What it came to my mind in the first place was like, wow, how much money involved in every single thing. Every single gigantic store that is the size of a whole building, a whole shopping mall in Brazil. It's just one store. The highways with 6 lanes each side, gigantic American flags that it's like, what is the real size of that flag? Because it's so far away, so high that it looks like a normal size, but it's like, what is this flag? It's the size of a freaking building. You know what I mean? And it's just like, it's so much money involved. It's the amount of money that it's not. You have to go to a place like São Paulo, the third biggest city in the world, but it's the only place in Brazil where you can see things that you see in a lot of places in the U.S. You know what I mean? I mean that big of a building and stuff like that, like New York City vibe, and this is, we're talking about the big cities, because the countryside Brazil is way different. Like the big cities are, you kind of can relate, but countryside Brazil, countryside United States is a whole different vibe. You don't get in every single town. You have a big Walmart, a McDonald's, a Wendy's, and little towns in Brazil, they don't have nothing. They literally have one restaurant, one gas station, and the houses, and a yellow dog lost on the street, and that's it. That's there's no, you know what I mean? It's like, it's so insane to see how developed really is a first world country, and then you really, when you get here, really see the difference between this. Like, wow, this is like, there's so much money involved in this, and build this environment. And I think a lot of aspects in America, in the United States, and also the lack of knowledge that a lot of American people, and this is a big thing, about a lot of people talk about it in social media, the lack of information about the rest of the world that U.S. Americans have. It's just like it's because here it's just so like everything inside of the United States is just like so you know build up to be right. It's just a lot of investment on everything here. Building right and everything, and you have a, a whole environment inside of one country that you can do basically everything. You don't need to go outside of the country to go to a tropical beach. You just go to Florida. You want to go to the biggest city in the world, just go to New York. You want to go to the desert, go to Nevada. You want to, you know what I mean. You want to go to the beach, you go to Hawaii. You want to go to the mountains, you go to Utah. You want to go to, you know what I mean. So you have a lot of different things to do here, and it's just like and I think this is a big difference. Like I've traveled a little bit about through like road trips in the countryside Brazil, and a little bit in countryside United States, more in the western coast. But and it's like it's so different.
Yeah, that's an amazing point. The difference between the investment in small towns. A lot of these countries around the world, obviously, you know, there could be mines closer to these towns, these country towns. There could be a lot of things going on, but there's going to be a company exploiting that and hiring. They're going to hire people from the area for pennies on the dollar. They're going to hire them for nothing. They're going to pay them nothing and take the stuff and not put money back into the community. I think a lot of what in the United States, there's a lot of money being put back in the communities, and a lot of people, are able to kind of keep their resources. Obviously, there's a lot of people living paycheck to paycheck in the United States too, but it's a different kind of it's different problems, right? So, it's fascinating to see. It's fascinating for you, from your perspective to see the differences between the countries and the allocation of resources and the allocation of the money. And a lot of times that money doesn't go back to the people, which is sad, but it's just the truth. And but I wanted to talk about a few different places in Brazil. Say if you have 2 weeks, if you're traveling to Brazil, what would be an ideal itinerary? What would be an ideal itinerary you would build for somebody else?
I would definitely say that the main spots that you should go would be Bahia and the north is in Brazil. Salvador, the city of Salvador, the first Brazilian capital. And also beautiful places in the coast of Bahia if you have time. So I would definitely go there to meet and very specific, a very very good, very big part of Brazilian culture, very interesting one. Then I would definitely say that you have to go to Rio and spend as much time as you need to go to Rio and get to know the town, go around, just be a whole day, walking around, going places because just to go to one place to another in Rio, you're like passing through the three prettiest landscapes you ever saw in your life in just one ride. Because it's just like Rio is really like we call it Cidade Maravilhosa, which means the wonderful city, and it really is wonderful. Every single corner of Rio is wonderful. Every single view of Rio is wonderful. So I would definitely do that, and I would also stop by São Paulo. It's not my favorite place in Brazil, but I would definitely say that you have to go if you're meeting Brazil and you get to know Brazil. São Paulo is a place that you have to go because you have a little bit of everything from Brazil in São Paulo. Every single thing in Brazil. And São Paulo is just such an important site. And if you still have time after those three, I would say for you, to go or historical places in colonial era Brazil and Minas Gerais. It's beautiful, amazing history, landscapes, churches, full field of gold from the inside in every single corner. Just art. It's just one of the prettiest, one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life. Or the Amazon. Or you should go to the Amazon. Should go to Manaus and should check it out, the forests, and go to get in touch with nature, do trail, do a camping, do something like that. Go to a great place for a great view and stuff like that. It would be definitely the most diverse, to get a little bit of everything, and you get to know you can say that you went to the most important places in Brazil. You have a pretty good overview for a 2-week trip. You have a pretty good overview of what Brazil is, and you're gonna collect good experiences out of that.
Thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people will appreciate that. The reason why I asked you 2 weeks is that's what usually Americans get. So that's kind of why I asked that timeline. It's different because we live in a seasonal town. We get a ton of time off, right? Which is sweet. About Rio a little bit. There's a rainforest right in the middle of the city, right? Like there's an accessible park that's an actual massive forest in the middle of the city.
Oh yeah, the Jardim Botânico, the botanical garden. It was built by the Dom Pedro II, the second emperor of Brazil, big figure in Brazil's history. Probably over time, one of if it's not the most important political figure in Brazil history, I would say. And he built a lot of things in Rio. He was the one that wanted to make Rio look like France. He was a very educated guy, and I went there in the Jardim Botânico. It's beautiful, amazing, great view for the Christ the Redeemer, on top of the cliff. Really far away, but you can see it with bare eyes, or with a good camera, not your phone. But yeah, it's a beautiful place, and Rio have insane spots. Christ the Redeemer, Pão de Açúcar, the trail of Pedra da Gávea, with the great view for the south zone of Rio and all those world famous beaches in Leblon, Arpoador e Copacabana. So, and it's a great place with a great nightlife, and you also can enjoy a baile funky, a funky party in one of the favelas. Can enjoy one that's going to be really cool, and also historical and famous places for artists and musicians in Rio, and all that bohemic life that you have. And it's a beautiful life, and it's a beautiful city. You definitely can. It's hard to get tired of Rio because you have so much to do, and you have such stunning places to go. I went there in November last year, just right before I came to the U.S. again, and I had a great time in my sister's house. Went to a lot of historical places, a lot of great views, and it's definitely probably the most special place in Brazil. I would say, and it's definitely the one that you can miss if you're traveling to Brazil. You can miss Rio if you have to, get a little bit of time to go there and check it out because it's going to work.
Yeah, I love Rio. It's probably one of my favorite cities in the world. It's um, the most beautiful city in the world, and I don't think anyone could contest that if they've actually been there. Um, it's almost objective. I love it. Ipanema Beach. Um, Meeting up with my good friend Marina. We went out to just the streets at night, and it was just so vibrant and so lively, and we had a good time. Um, Also with my friend Leo from Germany, we went out the night before and danced samba and had an incredible time. It's just the vibrations there are just like unlike anything else. And I wholeheartedly love that city, and I definitely would be back, but for Carnival next time. The people there are just amazing and very hospitable, just like Brazilians are. But um, I think we should wrap this up soon. It's been about almost 2.5 hours. Yeah.
Really?
So I wanted to ask you before we wrap this up, if you would like to give any advice to people. It could be travel advice. It could be anything.
My advice is advice my dad gave me once, and it's about traveling, but it's also about life. We were talking a little bit about this earlier, but my advice for you is live a life that is bigger than you. That your goals are not just about, it's not just about you. You can do something for you. You can do things for yourself that are good for yourself, thinking about what is best for you. But thinking about it and do it thinking on what is best for me so I can be good for others. Because that, in my experience and everything that I told you guys today, have teach me that if you do this, your life is going to have a purpose, and all the right things and all the right stuff is going to show it up for you. And as long as as long as it's concerned to traveling, also when you're traveling, you're learning a lot. You're getting a lot of experience. You're gonna be put in a lot of situations, whether good or bad. Be open for it, and be accepted, and go with the flow, and learn from it. Learn how to be better for it. Give everything of yourself, and be open. And this is what I did my whole life, and a lot of experience that I have, as you guys noticed. And this is what I did when I came to the U.S. A whole different place with a whole different culture in Utah, pretty different than Brazil. You guys can tell, and that's what I did. I remain myself open to the experience and the opportunities, and this is going to lead to a great experience in a great way. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for coming on, spending your time with me today on this podcast. I really appreciate it. I know everyone's time is valuable. It's the most valuable thing we have, and you should always use it wisely. But yeah, man, I appreciate you.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me. Thanks you guys for listening to the podcast, and shout out to the next episode with Ryan. And that's it, guys. Great hug. Bless.
We're out, and always remember, the world is your oyster. That's a wrap on this episode of People, Places, and Things. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Whether you're dreaming of your next adventure or just love hearing stories from across the globe, we hope we inspired a bit of wanderlust in you today. If If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with fellow travelers. Until next time, keep exploring, keep dreaming, keep discovering new people, places, and things.